Estamos ao vivo.
Sim! Estamos ao vivo, direto do Brasil, para todo mundo.
Do Brasil. Quem sabe se o Erik Larsen tem Instagram?
Erik Larsen não tem Instagram, ele tem só o Twitter, que você já marcou ele, Mr. Larsen. É? Cadu, acho que também já marcou ele no Twitter, não foi, Cadu?
Eu marquei meio sem querer, porque eu dei retweet no tweet do Caruso, basicamente.
Eu acho que mais gente marcou.
Eu coloquei no Twitter.
Tudo bem? Boa noite. Boa noite. Já está na ordem das perguntas, hein? Peraí, o Mário que vai aqui depois. Peraí, deixa eu colocar o Mário aqui. Aí. Fernando, Mário, Cadu e Salada. O Levi, quando entrar, vai ser o último aqui. Hoje a gente não vai ter o Aristides, porque, infelizmente, o Aristides, vocês sabem, galera de casa, boa noite para todo mundo que está em casa, antes de mais nada. O Aristides está fazendo um grande livro, bem legal, de fotos, contando sobre a arquitetura da Itália no Rio de Janeiro, e está fazendo isso para o consulado, então ele precisa arrumar lá as coisas, então, infelizmente, ele não vai estar aqui, mas receberemos aqui, em algum momento, Levi Trindade, que vai aparecer aqui, porque Levi também é muito fã do Erik Larsen, como todos que estão aqui. Erik Larsen...
Levi Trindade não é fã. Eu sou fã. Vocês estão de modinha. Eu sou fã.
Tá de modinha pro negócio de Trindade.
Caralho.
Aqui,
eu sou fã dele desde a época de Homem-Aranha.
Você tem desenho, mas ó, aqui, ó. Também
eu
tem.
basicamente inventei o Erik Larsen no Brasil, gente.
Vem com essa,
não.
Meu Deus.
Eu sou um fã original do Erik Larsen.
Você daqui a pouco vai parecer aqueles nerdolas. Olha o que você vai falar. Vai parecer aqueles caras que falam: vocês destruíram minha infância, não sei o quê. Acabaram.
A gente tá aqui nessa tensão aqui. Cadê? A galera já tá entrando? Já tá entrando.
A galera tá entrando aí. Boa noite.
Eu falei pro Caçamba pra gente abrir, né? Pra gente fazer esse esquenta.
Aí, ó.
Porque a gente vai ficar nessa tensão de será que ele vem mesmo? Será que ele não vem?
Aqui, já tá com Ent? Já comprou o seu Ent?
Pode ser que seja uma pegadinha do Mário. Pegadinha do Larsen. Não sabemos.
O negócio é o seguinte, gente. Você já avisou o Larsen porque a gente já tá online, Mário? Você deu uma... Não, tipo, já estamos lá.
O Mário, rapaz, o Mário tá fazendo um excelente trabalho, que ele falou com o Larsen. Ele mesmo pilotou o avião. Tá vendo que ele tá com jaqueta de piloto? Não parece que ele tá dentro de uma negócio de avião?
Top Gun.
Que isso? O Mário acabou de assistir Top Gun Maverick. Ele tá no
o cara vai entrevistar o Larsen e se veste de Rocketeer.
Saiu do cinema, comprou pra ficar igualzinho Tom Cruise.
Iremos aqui, ó. Hoje tem Savage Dragon aqui.
Ficou muito pequenininho na minha tela, mas eu tenho Savage Dragon, tem o Super Patriota e tem o She-Dragon também.
Tu tem o She-Patriota? O Super Patriota?
Tem o autógrafo.
E tem encontros.
E aí me vem Cadu Castro com um formatinho, sabe?
Aqui, ó.
Cadu,
olha isso.
Aqui, ó. Melhor página de desenho do Erik Larsen.
Um dos desenhos mais legais é essa página do Larsen, cara.
Esse é um dos melhores desenhos do Larsen.
Eu acabei
de virar um ciborgue.
Dá pra ver, cara. Aqui atrás.
Você consegue chegar mais pra trás se quiser?
Na gaveta. Isso aqui é minha coleção de Savage Dragon.
Olha
essa aqui é aquela história assim. No incêndio, é isso que eu pego e saio correndo.
Não fala incêndio, que a casa do Larsen pegou fogo, não esqueça disso.
Não fala.
E ele é meio traumatizado com isso. Eu já li alguns
crime de...
Tá? Ô, Mário, mas como eu estava falando, a gente está aqui na expectativa, o senhor Larsen falou que entraria a partir de 8 horas de Nova York, não era isso? 8 horas de Nova York, exatamente agora, isso, 9 horas do Brasil. Ele já disse qual 8 horas que é para entrar, para não ter problema, né?
Eu já defini por Nova York, que é só 1 hora daqui, porque continhas que cruzam para o outro lado complica, né?
Mas ele tá em Nova York ou ele tá...
Não, ele usou Nova York tipo o nosso horário de Brasília, sabe? Tipo,
mas ele tá onde? Ele tá...
Acho que New York.
Los Angeles é o quê?
Los Angeles, né? Não, São Francisco.
Eu acho que é São Francisco.
3 horas para trás.
Todas as cidades, 1 hora a gente acerta, né?
Não, é 3 horas para trás, é isso mesmo.
Eu achava que ele morava em Chicago, né?
Também achava que ele morava em Chicago. Nunca entendi por que ele escolheu o Chicago pro... Quem sabe alguém pergunta isso hoje, porque a minha pergunta é outra. Minha pergunta é muito complexa. Vai dar trabalho.
Vai que ele nasceu lá, que foi criado lá.
Eu vou precisar da ajuda dos 3 tradutores aí para fazer minha pergunta, porque eu não sei metade das palavras da minha pergunta, então vou ficar no meio, vou ficar falando, como é que fala não sei o quê? Aí vocês me ajudem. Eu tô nervoso, vocês estão reparando. A Mariana, minha esposa, tava nervosa por mim.
Olha,
eu postei e tal, mas ela não presta atenção nas coisas que eu faço, né? Aí quando ela falou, tipo, eu tô indo agora lá na casa do amiga minha, não sei o que, não, você não quer ir comigo? Eu falei, não, hoje eu tenho a live lá com o Cassiano, com o Erik Larsen. Ela falou, com o Erik lá? E pra ela guardar o nome...
porque ela sabe quanto... Posso contar uma história da minha esposa também, porque...
Não, aí ela, só pra concluir, ela falou, tipo, caraca, é como se eu fosse, ela falando, né, como se eu estivesse entrevistando o Lin-Manuel Miranda. Ela fez essa tradução de importância pra ela. Fala aí, Gabriel.
Não, eu acho engraçado, porque eu acho que até comentei com você, Caruso, que a minha esposa, ela também não se interessa por nada disso, né, na verdade. E aí... eu já tinha falado para ela do Erik Larsen, porque ela assiste um seriado no Globoplay de um seriado norueguês de enfermeiros, e o personagem principal se chama Erik Larsen. Sério, juro para você. E aí, quando apareceu o nome do personagem, eu falei, peraí, Erik Larsen? Ela é. Eu falei, não, esse é o nome de um desenho de quadrinhos, assim, tipo, super muito famoso. Foda. Aí mostrei os gibis pra ela, mostrei aqui, sabe? Tipo, ele que fez isso aqui, ela...
Você reparou que o Cadu não falou, não é o nome do meu desenhista preferido de quadrinhos, não falou. Ele falou, desenhista super famoso.
Não, então, mas o meu desenhista preferido de quadrinhos, infelizmente, é o Todd McFarlane, então, assim, pô, é esse.
A gente não vai ter entrevista com o Todd McFarlane porque o Cassiano não tem condição de entrevistá-lo. Não tem condição física, fisiológica.
Eu acho que eu morro.
Não,
eu acho que assim, E aí, quando eu falei...
Ele vai fazer que nem o Chris Farley. O Chris Farley aquele personagem do Saturday Night Live, não sei se você lembra desse personagem, que era um cara que encontrava os atores no aeroporto, encontrava, tipo, sei lá, o Tom Cruise. Aí ficava, you're Tom Cruise, remember Top Gun? Remember that time?
Eu fiquei assim com o Frank Miller. Imagina como é que eu ia ficar com o McFarlane. Mr. Miller.
Vocês assistem
eu sou o único que tá a caráter, é isso? Né? Gente, na moral.
Aqui tá frio. Tá frio.
Aqui tá frio também. Mas eu estou aqui no calor do sentimento. O que é, Mário?
Tô com 3 camadas.
Eu não tenho camisetas, o máximo que eu conseguiria me pintar de verde e colocar uma luva verde, que nem o Didi colocava na cabeça. Que
Tem uma camiseta verde, serve?
Tá bom.
O João Deus falou aqui que se o McFarlane aparecer hoje, eu começo a falar de trás para frente.
O Cassiano fala em línguas, né? Vocês assistiram aquele desenho DuckTales? Caçador de Aventuras?
O antigo ou o novo?
O novo,
os dois.
Eu acho o novo simplesmente genial. E no desenho novo... Opa!
Oi.
No desenho novo, o Capitão Boing, né, que não é Capitão, é Boing, ele é fã do Darkwing Duck. Né? Ele é fã doente do... E tem um episódio que ele encontra o Darkwing Duck, ele participa. Só que ele desmaia toda vez que ele olha pro Darkwing Duck. O que é um problema, porque ele que tá dirigindo o carro.
Ou avião, né? Isso é muito bom.
Deixa
lá.
Como é que eu transformo uma guia numa nova aba no Mac?
No Mac?
Clica na guia e arrasta.
Foi isso que eu fiz. Muito obrigado.
O Camilo Solano. Esperando o Erik Larsen.
Aí, tá todo mundo aqui no esquenta da espera do Erik Larsen.
Premiado Camilo Solano no nosso chat.
A minha namorada Bianca falando aqui, agora que começou a live, já posso relaxar. Super entendo a esposa de vocês. Eu tô fazendo ela ler quadrinhos, gente.
A Bianca lê quadrinhos?
Oi?
A Bianca lê quadrinhos?
Lê.
A Mari lê também, mas não lê Savage Dragon.
Sim.
Não, Savage Dragon.
Minha esposa ela não lê quadrinhos.
Ele não tá entendendo o que a gente tá falando. Hi, Mr. Larsen!
We are praising you like a religious leader.
Okay, that's great.
All right. glad to see you guys reverted to English. That's the only language I actually know.
Yeah, we are in the English mode now. So I am the culprit for yesterday. Sorry, deeply sorry for the time fuse trouble. Sorry.
Okay, we're good.
Thanks so much, Mr. Larsen. And welcome to Mundo Gonzo. Fernando Caruso, vamos começar com você que tá mais, né?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's a deep honor to receive you in our country. I'm a huge Savage Dragon fan. One of my greatest accomplishments in my life was getting a letter published in I don't know the number anymore, but it's here with me. I have your original drawing here. I have those are my little toys here, as you can see, and I'm also in character because I'm wearing not only the Savage Dragon shirt, your signature here. Because that happened, and I have
now where
photo proof.
Where was that at?
That was in San Diego Comic Con in 2006.
All right.
And
here.
There we are. Okay, so
believe it or not, I'm perfectly sober in that picture.
Well, so to me, I've been reading Savage Dragon ever since it was first published, and I'm still reading now. And every time that I travel, I try to get the single issues and everything. So I'm deeply into the Savage Dragon universe. So it's the closest I'll ever be of being in the presence of God. Because you are the creator of the whole universe. That's the kind of nervous that I am right now. So
he has my religious experience right now.
Yeah. Well, but my first question is it's kind of a difficult question. I'll be asking for help for the translators. We have 3 professional translators here, so I might lose
Mario
or 2.
Rogério,
and Cadu, they're all translators. Well, and my first questions involve politics. Because it's a two-parter. It's a two-part.
What? A two-part?
It's a two-part. So first, the first part. I know that you did in Savage Dragon's lifetime some political covers. There's Bush being bushwhacked in the face. We know that it wasn't an imposter, but the cover. There's Bush. There's also Obama in the cover, and you did not so long ago a Trump cover. And since Trump as well as Bush, they are both Republicans, but I wonder if there was a difference, even though they're both Republicans in the response of each supporters of the politicians. Am I making myself clear? Kind of could you feel this difference in the way of reacting with the Trump supporters, because we live
the Trump supporters are more rabid, I would say, because that's more of a cult than a political movement. It's a little bit different. But unlike with Bush, I had Bush actually speak dialogue that I made up. With Trump, I didn't actually put any dialogue in his mouth at all. So it was all his
verbatim.
Yeah, it was all his. Every line of dialogue was mostly coming from people who were supporters, and not only that, but I actually went online and photo referenced a lot of those supporters, and I went on Facebook groups and on comment sections on YouTube and pulled direct quotes for people for their dialogue. So nothing, I mean, I had to change a couple words because they weren't necessarily talking about, what I needed them to talk about. Mm-hmm. But so it was pretty much them in their own words. And then there were still people who were just like, oh my gosh, this is so unfair. You're the person you are. How can you put those words in our mouth? How can you make us look like such idiots? And it's like, well,
that's kind of on you.
I'm sorry. That's your guy. So, those are your people. So
yeah, I'm asking exactly because since there's this kind of a cult, as you describe it, we live in kind of a similar situation here. This way of doing politics is being reproduced in other countries, and we are suffering from something kind of like that. And there are a lot of people.
Good Lord.
And there are a lot of people that defend the idea that comics should not involve politics at all. And usually people who support that idea defend a kind of terrible politics. And yes. I would like to hear your... What would you say for those people that think that comics should not mix with politics?
Mm-hmm. There are plenty of comic books to read, and I would recommend that if you don't like that in my work, then read something else, because there are many options. And for the most part, I hardly ever touch on politics at all. But since my book is set in the real world, or is what I do is I use real time in my comic. So the year 2022 is the same as it is in the real world. So I've got to have some touchstones as to, what's going on in the real world right now. So if COVID is happening and people are in lockdown, and I've got to at least address that to some degree in my comic book. And there will be different things along the way where I'll be like, somebody's singing a song in the shower, they're going to be singing a new contemporary song. They're not going to be singing something that I would have listened to when I was their age, that sort of thing. So it's like Malcolm Dragon is the lead character now, and his wife Maxine. I'm trying to keep it as contemporary as I can for the most part. So there's always going to be something. And part of that, at least in the United States, is, politics plays a part in that. And it's a real way of going, this takes place now. That's going on now.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Fabiano, você gostaria que eu traduzisse a resposta pro...
Mário.
That was my two-parter.
So Erik Larsen, I don't Portuguese, okay? I don't speak in Portuguese, okay? Mário, Rogério, and Cadu translate with you my questions, okay? No problem, please. Só avisar o pessoal de casa, a gente vai fazer hoje a live toda em inglês. Vai ser traduzida e legendada em breve, então, como a gente tem pouco tempo com o Mr. Larsen, a gente vai tentar fazer ela toda em inglês, tá ok? Mário, vai você agora, depois eu faço as perguntas aqui da galera.
What Cassiano, our host, said is that we are going to subtitle the live later, so we will not have simultaneous translation, so we can speed up and have more interaction between the great guests and our other
mainly because I have a zillion questions. A zillion questions.
Guys,
Caruso has a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Guys, and on surprise.
Yeah.
Hey, look.
Oh,
Yeah.
There you go.
Welcome, Mr. Al Gordon.
That's Al Gordon.
Hi, guys.
Wow.
Nice.
Now that's great. Now everybody's here.
Yeah.
We're everybody? That's
This
amazing.
is
we are everybody that matters.
This is the whole big game.
I had to figure out a browser. You guys are the app, the browser application here doesn't work on Safari. So I had to
switch over to Chrome.
It made my Firefox fart too, so I had to go into Chrome, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Welcome to Brazil.
Welcome to Brazil.
In the safest way possible.
I wish I was in Brazil. That would be awesome.
So who's next? Oh, Cassiano, né? So Cassiano is going to. Oh, Mario. It's Mario's turn.
Okay.
I thought like Bill Clinton was going to play like saxophone here or something.
If you want.
It's madness.
So welcome, Mr. Gordon.
A bunch of these dudes are translators, and it's chaos. That's where.
Yes. It's a lot of chaos.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's chaos and love.
Welcome, Mr. Gordon. We are very happy to have you and Mr. Larsen here. It's a double big treat for us, and we are very honored and very happy because it doesn't happen frequently here. And we are huge fans, and we all have your works here. So I have your Justice League, your Legion, your Wild Star that we wish so much to have. Please, if you want us to knock at Jerry Ordway's door and implore him, please, I will beg him, Jerry Ordway, work again with Mr. Gordon and give us more Wild Star.
Well, I didn't quite catch what you were saying with Jerry. You said, or
well, if you wish us to knock at Jerry Ordway's door, we can ask for more Wild Star.
That would.
There you go.
Well, we did the other 3 issues with Chris Marinan, who was in the studio with me and Eric. We were all sharing a studio at the time back then.
I didn't know if you guys knew that. Al and I used to share a studio together.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it was me and Eric. Steve Lealoa was in there,
kind of.
in theory, although we rarely saw him. I don't know if you guys know who Steve Lealoa is.
Yes, I know. Yes, you know.
Of course we do.
We were all from the San Francisco, and then Chris Marinan was a commercial artist that was in there with us, and Pete McDonald, 2 other commercial artists.
Well,
and Chris did the 3
Chris
issues.
did a number of comics. He did Wild Star with you. He did Wonder Woman for a while. He did Doctor Strange.
Yes.
So he did a few things.
I think he did Alpha Flight too with Bill Mantlo.
Was that?
I don't think he did that.
No.
Alpha Flight?
I think you're conflating him with somebody else, but.
It's always good to conflate, Chris.
Anyway, Cassiano, I think I have spent my time, so we can go to the other another interviewer. Right?
Okay.
I have talked too much.
Well, you guys are all from Brazil? All 4?
Yes. We're all from
Yeah.
Brazil. We are. I'm in Rio de Janeiro. Cassiano and Cadu are also in Rio de Janeiro. Rogério are in São Paulo, and Mario is in the south part of the country. Is in Santa Catarina.
Santa Catarina. or Santa Catarina.
Okay, so who's next? Because
next,
Rogério.
It's me. Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you guys, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Larsen. I work with comics for 20 or some years as editor and translator. I was Mario's boss for some time. It was a very difficult relationship, you should. And I am enthusiast of comics. My wife worked in the indie comics, and to me, comics is what I do. So I want to ask for you guys, for you too, for Mr. Gordon, Ms. Lars, one question about comics in more
in general.
More general. When Image came, when Image was founded, the great different thing about Image was that comics talk with more proximity with the readers, because others great publishing, Marvel, DC, and others, it has some distance from the readers. As Mr. Larsen said, the comics are in real world with topics that the readers know better. Did you guys see this now? You see that Image still maintain this proximity with the readers, with the fans. Not Caruso. Caruso is another question. But with the fans, and now Image Comics has a lot of new releases of new artists, new comics artists. Every year, you have a new batch of new artists. Did you know the great difference in Image Comics and your works are that you talk more with the readers? You have more attention to the real world with the readers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's kind of the nature of the world we're living in now, especially just because there's all these online connections with Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and all that. So you can have the ability to talk directly to people a little more now than you could certainly when we started. But also we kind of were raised on all those old Marvel comics where Stan would always be talking to people in the letters pages. And I think part of it was we liked that sense of community that was going on in those comics. And we just kind of wanted to kind of continue that tradition when we started doing stuff at Image. At least
and I guess you make an evolution of that, because in Marvel Comics, I love Marvel Comics, don't get me wrong. I love Marvel, I love DC, I love a lot of comics. But in some stories, I think the people are too tight to constrain it in some formulas. And when you break these formulas, you have great opportunities to make great stories, great characters, great comics.
Erik is 10 years younger than me, so you can see so much more, so much less mature, I should say. But when we were doing WildStar, my first job that I had in comics was working on, or one of my first was doing Spider-Woman at Marvel, where I completely massacred Carmen Infantino, an artist that I truly loved, but I inked him and it was really awful. But one of the things I kept pitching to all the editors on just about every product, every project, book, project, that's better. I was on one of the first Spider-Womans I worked on. I convinced them to do an all about Spider-Woman page, which was something that I remember reading when I was about 10 years old in the Fantastic Four. I think number 9, there was a page that was How the Human Torch Flies. And I thought that was, as a 10-year-old, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so that was something that I think, Erik's not as old as me, so he wasn't hit by that stuff the way I was. But we definitely tried to do WildStar like that. And in fact, when we did the trade paperback, Jerry and I were both collecting laser discs, those very expensive, gigantic discs. And we were big fans of the company called Criterion. So when we did the trade paperback, we tried to make that into a Criterion release of WildStar. It was in our mind. So yeah, it was totally to get into the fans. We invented an editor who didn't exist. It was a guy that we called Bud Shakespeare. who was actually me and Tom Beerbaum, who I worked with on the Legion. Tom is a brilliant, funny guy, and we would get together on a weekend and go through the letters to Wildstar, and the two of us would answer it, and we would say we were Bud Shakespeare. It was a lot of fun.
Bud Shakespeare.
But it was basically as if Stan Lee was some 16-year-old skateboarding freak.
Like comics now, like I'm still maintaining a letters page in Savage Dragon, which is something that Marvel has all but given up on, and I think that's part of keeping that communication open with your audience, but just having there be a certain amount of back and forth in that. And I also like letters pages just because it's this time capsule that kind of sticks with the comic.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like 10 years from now, you can go, well, I wonder what they were thinking back then. And you've got that as a handy, it's just always part of that comic is the letters page.
Didn't you guys?
And it's a way for a reader to see himself in the comics.
I remember I wrote in a couple times, and I got a letter printed at one point, and it was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, me too.
This is so cool.
It was very cool to be in a Marvel comic book. If you're a historian, a comic historian, and you do your due diligence, you can find Walt Simonson, I think, in a Magnus the Robot Fighter comic book, I think. And
I guess so.
And Bernie writes it in an issue of Creepy or Eerie as a fan, not as an artist, but as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old fan. That stuff's awesome.
There's a bunch of them.
Yes.
Roy Thomas wrote in letters. Kurt Busiek wrote in letters. Todd McFarlane wrote in letters.
Mm-hmm. Frank Miller complimented Ross Andrews' work in Amazing Spider-Man letter column.
Yeah. Todd wrote in a ton of letters just because he thought if he wrote in a million letters to people that they would get printed, and he would always run it, and he would always send in letters to the books that he figured didn't get much mail. So he'd be writing into House of Mystery and all those weird ones, mostly because he wanted the editors to get familiar with his name, so that when he submitted work, they would be,
remember.
Oh, I know this guy. I better open this one.
That's on the plan.
That's amazing.
Go, Cadu!
Okay. So, hi, Mr. Larsen, Mr. Gordon. I'm a big fan. I've read comic books my entire life, and it's a pleasure. It's an honor to talk to you too. And
English really well.
Oh yeah,
he's an English teacher.
I'm an English teacher.
Yeah.
Apart from being a translator, I'm also an English teacher. I've not been teaching many classes recently because of COVID, but I'm also an English teacher. So yeah.
And the only reason we are all speaking kind of badly because we're really nervous.
Yes, there's also that. Yes, there's also that.
This is my case. This is my case.
I can order beer in Spanish, and that's about it. You know.
Well, but that's important. That's important.
Yeah. So and I like it's like
it's a great sentence to have on your back pocket
in every language. Yeah,
and it's easier to flirt with the pretty Mexican waitresses too.
So I've got a question that is I've read somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, that you, Mr. Larsen, when you made Dragon jump from one world to another, that it was kind of a complicated thing for you to keep track of everything that has changed or that hasn't changed in between these worlds, these new worlds that he traveled. And I was thinking, in this 30-year history of Savage Dragon, or in comics in general. Like the question, I can extend the question to both of you. Is there any regret of a story that you did that later on you thought, okay, I should have done that differently?
I think you can ask that backwards. Is there one that you don't feel that way about?
Or that you could done better, I don't know, or something like this.
Yeah, there's been a few.
Yeah,
I would say there's been a few different stories.
Name them.
Oh, crap, that was a mistake. What can you do? You know, you got to move forward. So I think with that stuff, you just kind of roll with the punches. Once it's in print, there's nothing you can do about it.
It's there, right?
But can you name two?
One, I don't know, maybe.
It gives you an opportunity to, I'm watching one of my wife's favorite TV shows is Stargate SG-1. And
That's a good one.
You know, it's not my favorite show, but I really like the characters, and she loves the show dearly. And it's fairly obvious as you go through it that they wrote themselves into 5 or 6 corners in every season. So what they would do, I'm sure that the writer's room would get together and watch these episodes and then go, we screwed these up really good here. What can we do? What can we say? What kind of story can we write that makes what we messed up work? I mean, Buffy did that all the time. I was talking to one of the writers on Buffy, and he said, yeah, at the end of every season, we would go through and make lists of all the stuff we screwed up. And then we'd have a writer's room meeting and talk about, and he said that was the greatest, some of the best stories came out of that. Well, we did this, and we had Buffy say this. What can we say about that now, since that was obviously wrong then? And we'll say, no, it wasn't wrong. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, when I was working on WildStar, I was writing, I'd write the plot, like a full script for Jerry, and I'd give it to Jerry to write, and it would have all the dialogue in it. So he had all the room. He knew how much room each panel had for to put the copy in. And then I'd start writing the next issue, and then I'd be inking the issue that he'd just finished, and I'd realize that I'd messed a couple things up, and I'd have to go back to issue 2 and change some things because now I needed to change some of the dialogue in issue 1. That went on for 4 solid issues. And it was just, I mean, it was really, time travel stories are a pain in the ass anyway.
Yeah.
But this was like, you know, really insane. But Jerry did get the best joke out of it, but I think he stole it.
Guys, questions of audience. Vão Deus. Mario, please.
Today, could we have another movement like image founders or artists, writers are established and they don't want to have any trouble with their bosses? Será que hoje a gente conseguiria ter um outro movimento que nem o dos fundadores da Image Comics, ou os desenhistas e roteiristas estão tão no establishment, né? Estão tão estáveis que eles não querem ter problemas com as chefias?
Larsen?
Could it happen again?
I hope so.
I mean, I would think it could happen again, but the problem right now is that you don't have a large body of artists that are sticking on one book that could leave en masse and cause the same sort of disruption that we did when we left en masse. It's harder when you've got guys who are just doing 6 issues a year when they leave, as opposed to, you know, like when I left Spider-Man, it was like, oh, now that it's a completely different creative team on every single issue. Whereas, you know, if somebody who just does a few issues a year leaves, it's like, oh, I thought he was still coming back. He's not. He's gone. Oh, okay.
How many years of Spider-Man did you do?
I don't know, 2.5 years, maybe something like that.
I think that
Spider-Man, and then I followed Todd on the other Spider-Man book, so I was kind of both of them.
we're living in a different era. We don't have like the rock stars that we had back then.
Well,
right?
A lot of it is very different. Back in the day, writers were writing plot style, and so they would give the artist a plot, and then the artist would be more of a collaborator, where he was coming up, or he or she, or they were coming up with a lot of the visual ideas that were going along with stuff, leaving some room for dialogue, and then the writer would come in and script to the artwork after the fact.
Well, that was the Marvel way, though.
That was the Marvel way, but that's what we all kind of came up with. We were all doing that at Marvel. And then now most everybody is working from full script. And it's much more of a writer-oriented field at this point because of the way that comics are being created, which makes it really kind of a different thing when people are leaving. It's like, it would almost have to be a writer-driven thing, and they got to bring along some good guys with them. And that's kind of happening anyway, because we keep getting people who are coming over to Image going, hey, I want to do some stuff too. This is always what I want to do. And that just keeps happening, but it's not the en masse thing that it was back in 92. And also there's so many more books now. Before there was like 40 Marvel comics. Now there's like 100 Marvel comics. And at that point, when you lost 6 or 7 of your top guys on your top books, that was a big deal. Now it's harder for that sort of thing to happen.
And that's another thing too, because Image is still is still a thing. People can live some big publisher and kind of self-publish their work in Image. Image still is still receiving
all the time. I mean, we just announced today, like the creators who are working on Venom are coming over, and they're going to be doing a book at Image. It's like, okay,
so
those are good guys. Everybody likes those guys, and they're coming and doing some stuff at Image. Awesome.
Yeah. So the path it's paved. So it's easy
it's easy, and our deal is awesome. So there would be no reason to be like, oh, we got to form our own company now and do our own thing. It's like, that you guys up that kind of structure and everything is the biggest pain in the ass and the biggest hurdle to doing this stuff on your own. But if there's somebody like Image that's there, where you can just pop on and do this stuff, it's simple, it's just not like, oh, let me try this out for 6 months. Okay, this is really successful. I'll continue. If you
Image Comics came around at a perfect time too. It was a perfect, it was like the perfect storm. When I was 10, and buying comics, I was buying, Superman, who had been around for, since 1939, 36, whenever that was. But I was buying Marvels just after Julie Schwartz had sort of reintroduced all the DC characters. There was, the Atom was brand new. The Flash hadn't been around for years. I think he was reintroduced in Showcase or Brave and the Bold in like 1957 or something. And so, but those books had titles. The Flash was on issue 400, right? Even though it was brand new, it was on issue 400. So when I bought FF number 9, it was FF number 9. It was the 9th FF comic book. And I bought Spider-Man number 3 off the rack. I was too short to reach the top of the rack.
Wow,
I had to get,
that's amazing.
I had to get a guy, like a 16-year-old, an older boy. I was 9 to get the comic down for me. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world that this was a new company, Marvel, or it was MC. It wasn't even Marvel at the time. It was MC Comics. This was my comic. As a little kid, this felt like it was my comic book. Spider-Man, I I started reading with issue number 3, you know?
Wow.
It's like, you know, you're buying them. And I remember number 4 never came to the area I lived in, just south of San Francisco. So I was this little kid going, where's Spider-Man number 4? You know? And
meanwhile, I was busy being born at that time.
Well, Image came along at the point where that became the issue to a lot of fans.
Yes.
Image came
to
around,
all of us.
And I remember, now you got to talk about this, Eric, because I'm not sure how this happened, but I remember you and I talking about this early, because we were going to do Wildstar a little earlier, but my dad was real sick, and I couldn't participate. And I remember Eric talking to me about the meetings they were having, where they were trying to decide if, you know, how long had the dragon been around, and Eric was adamant that no, he's around when I create him. And that's it. But I remember Jim Lee wanted, you know, Wildcats to be in the public, whatever public they had created. Wildcats had been around for a while, right? Wasn't that all true?
Yeah, it was kind of a mess because a lot of the guys had never started anything new before. So they didn't really get that, oh no, when you're starting something new, it should start at the start. It shouldn't start in the middle of a story. It should be the beginning of something. I don't think they quite grasped the idea. And so in the first Youngblood story, they were a well-established team that was going about taking out some bad guy somewhere, and you weren't really getting them from the beginning. Whereas if you read the old Marvel comics, it'd be like, I read the first Spider-Man, and it's introducing me to Spider-Man. Or that's a bad example because he was from Amazing Fantasy, but
well, but that was the second time he was around with Spider-Man.
Yeah. But even in his first issue, they did recap his origin a little bit. So
I think Fantastic Four is a good example.
You know, you're getting in on the ground floor of those characters, whereas, you know, you read the first issue of Wildcats, I think the team had already been formed and they just recruited a new character. That was
it's a little bit confusing.
So it's like, well, you know, it seems like there's a bunch of issues that we can't read. We missed all of it.
The thing that's cool about the Dragon to me is that whenever you started reading the Dragon, let's say you were the same age as the Dragon, you're still the same age as the Dragon.
Yeah.
Really unusual in comic books. I mean, Spider-Man's been 20 years old for 50 years now.
Yeah.
The dragon is dead, but you know,
and super people can't have kids because they grow up weird, so they have to disappear. They have to go to another universe and come
Something
back as
a teenager or an adult.
or like a old man with glowing eye or something. So it's cool to see kids growing and becoming adults, and it's really groundbreaking.
And see marriages. I see a little difficult in comics to see people marry and have a wife or a husband and a companion, because looks like is a difficult to some formulated comics to have a wife or a husband, because the people don't know how to do this. And the image is well-handed. It's well used.
It's a difficult thing, and TV shows have always struggled with that over the years.
Yeah.
It's like, and I was always wondered how come somebody never took the challenge of going, okay, we've got Seinfeld, and we know that that's something that works, and we've got this other show called Mad About You, which is two characters that are married and they're very much in love and blah, blah, blah. How do we how can we make Seinfeld into Mad About You? Is there a way of doing that? Or do you just can't do that? And that seems to be the problem with a lot of situation comedies and just television shows in general, is that they expect that it's going to be the same status quo throughout. And that's something that on Savage Dragon in particular, that I'm coming on there going, no, there's not going to be a status quo. It's going to be this for a little while, and then it's going to transition into something else, and then that's going to transition into something else. They're not even going to live in the same town, and they're not going to be fighting the same villains, and everything's going to be changing constantly, and characters are going to be dying all over the place because it's a dangerous line of work to be in.
So guys, I have a question for the both of you. You have mentioned that most of the guys never started anything from the ground zero. But everybody knows that illustrators are storytellers. But how was the jump for Mr. Gordon to jump from inker to also writer, or Mr. Larsen to jump from the pencils to also writer? How was that? How difficult was that, or how easy was that? How was your experience?
With Erik, I mean, he was doing comics the Marvel way, so he was a writer whether he got credit for it or not. So when he was doing Spider-Man, whoever got credit for writing it, Erik was co-writing. There's no way around that.
Well, that's the part of it. Is it as a reader of something and as somebody who's following along? I mean, when you're working with somebody on any book, Al, you're constantly pitching ideas on having suggestions, because usually the writers are open to that sort of thing. They're just sitting there going, all right, well, what have you got? And it's like, all right.
It's easier on them.
Sure, let me make this easy on you. And so there is a constant ebb and flow there that goes on with working with other people.
I got my break writing because I was bugging the crap out of Keith. When we started doing the book, I was doing the last...
This is Legion Superheroes.
Yeah, Legion Superheroes, sorry. I was doing the last run that Paul Levitz had been writing. And about halfway... No, I guess when I started, Keith had told me, we're going to finish this. Do you want to ink it? And then Paul's leaving and we get to start the book over from scratch. Do you want to be involved? And I said, sure, that sounds great. And he said, but because I want you to be one of the co-writers. And I was like, wow, cool. The only guy that ever treated me like a writer was Archie Goodwin at Marvel. So Keith and I were working on Paul's book and tossing ideas back and forth for 6 months or more before we started working on the Legion. And then he got hired, Tom and Mary Beerbaum. And so it was basically a co-op. It was a commune, a commune, I guess, of writers. We were all coming up with ideas, and then Keith would sort of jumble them all together and draw something, and then Tom and Mary would write the script for it. So it was this real explosion, of stuff that was happening, and Tom and Mary would have to take what was put up by Tom and Mary and me and Keith, and then Keith drew it, and they would have to make sense out of it.
So at that point, was that a conference call?
Yeah.
Right? Because there was an email around then.
Yeah.
No, just fax machines.
Wow. Okay, fax machine.
Yeah. Well, and most of the time it wasn't a conference call. Usually it was Keith and I working, both with the phone jagged under our arms, and I'm inking, he's penciling, and we're just shooting stuff around. And then he will say, I'm going to talk to Tom and Mary about this. And he would call them. And then Tom would call me and go, hey, I just talked to Keith. He's got this idiot idea that we got, and it was a lot of fun. Finally, after almost 2 years of working on it, more than 2 years, actually, I just, all of a sudden I was coming up with all this crazy stuff. And it was too much for Keith to process. And he said, look, why don't you just write 4 issues and leave me alone for 4 months? And so I wrote issues 21 through 24 was my first. I didn't even have a typewriter, but that was my baptism. And I thought we were going to work on it the same way we worked on the Legion. I would call Keith up and say, so this happens, and this guy punches this guy gets mad at this guy eats a sandwich. It was all stuff like that. And so I called him up and I told him the first issue, and he said, great, now type it up for me. And I was, what are you talking about? I've never done that before in my life. So I had to learn how to.
Was that a full script then?
Yeah, so my first job was a full script.
Oh man.
I have a question relating to that, to the process, because I know Mr. Larsen, he writes and draws. So how do you, to both of you, how do you work your script? Does Mr. Larsen write a script for himself? Where do you do your notes? Do you use like Final Draft? Do you use Word?
That's funny.
How is it?
You write a script for yourself. That's it.
When I started, I did, and what I would do is I would write in Microsoft Word, and I got something else right now called Open Office is what I'm using right now. But at that point, what I would do is I would write one page, and it would just be bullet points. It would just say 1 through 20 on the one side of it, and then it would just be a line like this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, just so I could pace it out so that I could, when I got
describing the pages.
Yeah, but it was very, very basic, very basic. So, and mostly I'm writing for the page turns because I know that a left-hand page is going to be on one side and the right-hand page is going to be on the other side, and so I know that I can't have a surprise be on the right-hand side of the page. It's when you turn the page, you're going to see the left-hand side and the right-hand side together.
Genius.
So when you look at that spread, you've got a whole bunch of panels that's going on there. So okay, every cliffhanger is going to be a right-hand last panel. Every surprise is going to be a left-hand first panel. So you just have, those are like things you have to kind of keep in mind as you're sitting there doing this stuff. And so I would write out my little list, like this happens, this happens, this happens. And as time has gone on, I would make exhaustive lists, and I'm going to here, and then this is going to happen, and then issue this, I'm going to do this, and I would make these big long Word files, and as soon as I would write in all that stuff, I would never look at them again. So eventually, it's got to this point where I just start drawing the book. Period. There's nothing's written at all.
Wow.
I've got no notes of any kind, and I just kind of come into it.
You're going commando.
And it's like I know what went on in the previous issue. I have an idea in my head of the points I want to hit, but I'll just go at it. And kind of my job as a writer is almost that of an editor in a weird way, because I'll be coming into it going, this is the information I need to convey. This character has let's say somebody died in one issue. Okay, the previous issue somebody died. So now I'm picking up with the following issue. Am I going page 1 is the funeral? Am I going to do page 1 is the character some related character finding out that character died? Is that my big moment where I can have them going, oh crap, I can't believe whoever died. You kind of have to go through and go, okay, well, this is the arc of this idea. Where are the best places to cut that? And then every conversation, any conversation you have with anybody, a lot of it is going to be stuff that you go, okay, well, this part of the conversation isn't very interesting. Cut to the chase. What's the meat of this conversation? How can I distill this huge conversation down to the finest, most succinct way of telling this? Because I don't want to do a 5-page sequence of 2 characters just chatting with each other, because I think it's visually boring, and I think as a read, it's not necessarily that compelling as a read. So mostly I'm trying to go, what can I chip away? What can I get away from this? And how do I get this down to a very basic and vital conversation? And maybe you're going to feel like you're being shortchanged, but I think it's a more compelling comic if you're going, wow, there's 20 pages and I can't remove a panel from this thing without it falling apart. Every little piece of this is a vital component that absolutely has to be there. And a lot of stuff gets done in every issue, like a lot's being accomplished. And a big reason that I'm doing it that way is because every issue I need to cover a month's worth of events. So I can't, all my characters are getting older. Everybody's, we're going from kindergarten to first grade, and we got summer breaks, and we've got all these little pieces of real life stuff that have to happen. I can't do these issues where it's like, I'll just do 3 issues in a row where people are just in a big fight. It's like, I can't waste time like that. I can't waste all that space. The kids are going to get all big behind our back. We won't even get to see it. I got to see this.
I mostly agree with Eric, except I like comic books where 2 people are sitting at a table in a pizza restaurant, eating pizza and talking over the pizza restaurant for 4 pages.
That's a lot, though.
I love that stuff.
I was just looking. The other day, I was sitting there going, reading a new issue of a new comic, which I don't want to mention. But it was like characters were talking with each other, and it was 3 pages of 2 characters that I was not familiar with who were having a conversation, and the conversation just wasn't. It wasn't an interesting conversation.
It wasn't compelling.
It was just like it was not a compelling thing. It was just like, okay, so you're tracking time with these characters and I was going, well, how the hell did Stanley and Steve Ditko do with that when they were working on, And then, I looked it up and it was like, oh, they never had those moments. That would be 3 panels on a page, and they would have distilled that down to the essence of this character needs to say this character needs to say that, bam, 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 it's done, on to the next thing.
I don't completely agree with you. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid reading Spider-Man, when I'd gotten old enough that I wasn't as interested in comic books and I was more interested in girls, I would sometimes
I'm still waiting for that to kick in.
I would pull out my Spider-Man and just read the soap opera or the soup opera. I would just read the soap opera. I wouldn't read the fight scenes at all. I'd go through and just read all the bits with Peter Parker and Betty Brant because it was compelling to me. I thought it was great stuff.
Well, it depends too on the characters, though. If those
kind
are
of different genres,
in love. If you're having 2 characters that are talking with each other and they're characters that are unfamiliar to the reader, but they need to be there in order to convey a certain amount of information.
Right.
Just cut to the information if that conversation isn't interesting.
Well, when I was doing Wildstar, when I was trying to fix the problems that I'd created for myself in the first issue, I realized, I called up Jerry and I said, I got 2 pages we got to change in issue number 2 because I got to do all this crap exposition that I usually hate. And so there's 2 pages, I think. There's a wham bam introduction. Excuse me.
All right. No dying on us.
You guys talk for a second.
I would like to say that the first time I read Savage Dragon, I felt that you said that you couldn't take a frame from a panel from the page that it would fall apart, because for the first time that I had the first issue of the miniseries in my hand, the first page is like him laying down in a
burning field.
In a burning field, and then the next one he's already in the hospital, and things were happening so fast that I was like, what is happening? Am I missing something? And then I realized that this was your style. And then I said, okay, I get it. Now I get it. So, okay, I can go with it. Yes, because for the first time, I looked at it and was like, oh my God, everything's happening so fast.
It's really different when you contrast it with what other people are doing. Because other people are going, I'm writing this 6-part or 7-part or 8-part story, and then it's going to be a trade paperback when all this is done. And I'm sitting there going, no, every issue's got to be a complete meal.
And I thought it was kind of amazing at the time because I was very young. I was very new to this comic book world. Here in Brazil, when we grow up, we have a few stages, and usually the first stage is reading a kind of childish comics that is Monica's Gang. Yes, and it's a group of kids living in a neighborhood. It's very much like Little Lulu, very much like Little Lulu. Yeah. And then I remember for the first time I bought a comic book. It was a Spider-Man comic book, and it was completely different. And I felt the same way again when I bought Savage Dragon. When I jumped from a stage of a comic book to another one, and I was like, okay, this is different. I can understand this. Okay, let's see what is going to happen. So it was pretty cool at the time. This change.
Erik's a funny guy. If you look really closely, you see a lot of Steve Martin in him. What I was going to say when we just finished is that I had to write this exposition for 2 pages that explained what the whole 4 issues was about. And I didn't really want to do it, and I hated doing it, and I spent days doing it. Just 2 pages of dialogue. And I think it's pages like, I think issue 2 starts out with a sort of a Bugs Bunny fight scene. In fact, that's the way I described it to Jerry when he drew it, because he's got, Wildstar winds up, and I kept telling him it was like that old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's a batter, or he's a pitcher and he's throwing the ball to the batter. And I was explaining things very visual. There's no copy for 2 or 3 or 4 pages, and then there's 2 pages of unrelenting dialogue. And I wasn't really crazy about writing it, but I kind of needed it to go where I wanted to go. As I lose my voice again.
Yeah. But you had to establish your new world, your Wildstar universe per se.
That's.
Excuse me, yeah.
Guys. Essa pergunta da audiência aqui. Mr. Larsen, are you drawing now?
Me, no, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, I keep drawing. Every now and then I'll look down and it's like I'm a doodler. I'm always like, there's always like something's going on.
No napkin shall go unpunished.
I can't see what you're doing, man.
Good. I don't need to see it.
Oh, come on. Show us your doodle.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of crap that I do all the time, and it's like it doesn't do anybody any good. But it's it's just like, hey,
that's great.
I'm drawing a hand and whatever. And then
show us, Cassiano.
Closer.
I do this kind of crap all the time.
Now. Yeah.
Right?
That's
like, I'm drawing the side of the head. Oh, I'm drawing a hand. Oh, I'm drawing whatever,
Cool.
Just like I'm always trying to work out something either story-wise or composition-wise. There's always something that goes on. I started doing these little things where I would
nice.
Where basically I would shrink down a full page so I can kind of go, okay, let me work out a punching scene or work out a characters sitting there, so it's like I have this paper is all over the house at this point. It's just I'll be sitting there going, oh, I gotta go use the bathroom, and then I'll lay out 2 pages while I'm sitting there doing something else.
Toilet paper.
And
so do your kids read your stuff?
Oh God, no.
They are not like into comics.
No. My youngest was read Scott Pilgrim when it came out, so he was really into that book. Mm-hmm. And then my older son never read anything, as far as I know, in terms of comic books. I read both of them comics as kids, like that would be their nighttime stories. So it'd be like, oh, let me read you Tintin. And then we would buzz through one of those. It's like, oh, now let me read you Captain Marvel's Adventures. And I read them all that. Now I'll read you Fantastic Four. And I'll read you Thor. And and I would just be like all the major food groups, or I would be like, all right, what's a good comic for a kid? So I read him Commandy, and I would read him just anything that I thought that they would enjoy. And I thought, oh, this will prime them for reading comics. And they just, as soon as I wasn't reading them, they were just like, could not care less.
Oh man, that's terrible to hear. What about Mr. Gordon?
Let me just say one thing that I'm trying to finish here as I'm choking to death.
Listen, I'll get the opportunity to ask both of you, Mr. Larsen and Gordon. We promised about an hour of live show. We don't want to impose. So we are loving it. It's great. You are our idols. But
we don't want to kill Mr. Gordon.
Yes, and we not before his birthday, right?
Fine.
It's your birthday, isn't it? Tomorrow?
Next week.
Next week.
Next week. Oh, okay. I thought it
Did you see?
So we have time. We have time.
A problem with dates. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
anyway, just let us know if it's
Mr. Gordon was going to finish his statement.
If you can finish the story, I'll.
I can finish it.
This is it, huh?
Good luck. Good luck.
They invented these things called lozenges, and I totally forgot that they had been around all these years. What I was going to say about writing those 2 pages that I hated, I have had fans come up to me and tell me how much they love those pages. And it's like, wow, you have no taste. I mean, it's very weird. But I want to throw in what Erik said before. Like, I'm a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes. I love Calvin and Hobbes. And there are lots of Calvin and Hobbes that are just exposition. And that's the funny part. Mm-hmm. It's not incidental exposition. It's real, just the characters being philosophical a lot and funny philosophical. I'm done.
Okay.
Great.
And what about your kids? Do they read your stuff? Okay. So you don't have that kind of
that I know of. I don't.
Mario.
Maybe.
Yeah,
nephews and neighbors.
I've got 2, and they're adults now, so or semi-adults.
Well, we have some questions from people who are watching the live. Yes, and they want to ask both of you. How do you see the relation between comic books and the visual media? Yes,
and movies and live actions and live actions and cartoons and.
Oh.
Some are good, some are bad.
They're very different kinds of things. The thing that about comics in particular is that it can really be one man's vision, or in cases of creative teams, a couple people's vision. Whereas in movies, there's so many working parts that you may be like, oh, I wrote this great line of dialogue, but if it's not delivered the way that it needs to be delivered, it's not necessarily a great line of dialogue anymore. All of these different things they do relate to each other in different ways. Like when you're sitting there going, I'm reading a book, it's pure prose. It's just the writer communicating directly with you. You're an active participant in that book because you're still filling in a lot of the details yourself because they're not there. He's describing a room, the one that you're seeing in your head isn't necessarily the room that they're describing. When they're describing what a character looks like, you're filling in a lot of the details yourself because he's not going to be so specific that you're going to know exactly what that person looks like. In comic books, that the writer and artist together are communicating with you in such a way that you're getting all the words and you're getting the picture, so you're understanding what's going on a little bit more. But you're still a participant to some degree because there's no movement. And then once you get to motion pictures, it's all being entirely spoon-fed to you. There's nothing where you sit there going, I have to figure all this stuff out. It's
I wouldn't
all
say that
there.
100%.
Yeah.
I think there's room in movies and lots of room in comics to project your own world into it.
Well, there's a lot to everything, but it's varying degrees depending on what you're.
Prose is obviously the most. I mean, poetry.
Prose is the most because you're like, I don't know what this guy looks like particularly.
I don't even know what he's saying.
But I would like to expand this question a little bit and ask, can you imagine any of your work becoming a series or animated series or a live action series?
Yeah, I can imagine like Dwayne Johnson doing Savage Dragon. It's really happening on my mind right now.
Well, there was a Savage Dragon cartoon.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah,
I have a DVD.
But I don't know if you have plans for something right now or something like this.
You have
just
to do it.
recently. Just recently,
I really want you to get rich.
Well, the thing is, the hard part of all those things is selling it. It's a really long, involved process of going and pitching those shows and selling them and getting them produced. And it's almost like you got to quit your day job to go do this other thing in order to make this work. And I kind of like my day job, so that was kind of the problem with going and pitching a movie. It's like I don't have time to go pitch a movie, so I would have to get people that I trust to go out and do this. And I'm mostly like,
I can do it. If you want, I can do it.
I just rather make comics.
Okay.
I can see Caruso as the character in a Savage Dragon movie. The one who dies in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I can do the long.
It's weird because you're sitting there the whole time you're working on something. You're going, this is how I see it in my head, and this is how I imagine this being. And then suddenly you're watching live action or even animation, and the character opens his mouth, and you go, "Oh, that's not what he sounds like. What the hell is that? That's not his voice. That's not his inflection. That's not what's going on here." And sometimes they get it, and sometimes they really, really don't. And sometimes they have this very different interpretation. You're like, that wasn't what I meant. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. We are probably getting out of time because we went over an hour, like 20 minutes over. I could ask
you want to do it. I don't know if you guys have a hard break or whatever. I usually just go till the dinner bell rings.
Okay. Well, I have kind of a hard question because I really, really, really wanted to know. I'm not trying to cause
harder
any
than
trouble.
the first one.
I don't know. Maybe I have the 10-year image comic book. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Okay.
But it's missing someone. Why is that?
Probably because they weren't with the company at the time.
Okay.
So I think that's when it came down to it, it was like, all right, well, who's still around? Let's celebrate with whoever's still around. And I think by that point, both Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld were no longer doing stuff at Image Comics.
Okay. So it was amicable.
Yeah, it was amicable enough. it was a situation where Jim Lee was under contract at DC Comics to produce work for them, and his characters were no longer part of the Image universe, so to speak. So he couldn't be part of it. And then Rob Liefeld was off doing something else, and he wasn't actively working at Image anymore. So he wasn't a part of it. I mean, I guess we could have roped in a couple other people who were currently doing stuff at the time, but it didn't seem like that was the thing to do.
It was a 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, it was an anniversary of the. I mean, I would have liked it if we would have gotten the band back together, but you know, whatever.
I'll play guitar.
And Mr. Larsen, looking back 30 years, would you expect to be here? Would you expect to?
Not with you guys in particular.
No one expects that. I know that.
Yeah.
Well, but maybe 15. I don't know.
But what I say is you have a lot of ANOS nominations and awards. I have just read about Terry Dodson's nominations for Best Colorist at the recent 2022. And I don't know if you're still president, but what does a president do, and how do you feel proud or not about your people?
Which
You people.
Yeah, your people. Since you're president, you have a people, right? If you were a king, you have subjects.
Yeah, this is it.
Erik has subjects.
Yeah. Oh man. I can't even control my own children, much less everybody else.
But anyway, looking 30 years back, how do you feel?
I just take it one day at a time, you know. It all just kind of one day flows into the next. You don't really think about it as a volume of stuff. Or as a huge length of time. You just kind of go, okay, it's a day at a time, and there we go. And eventually, enough time rolls around where you go, oh, look at that, we've been doing this for 30 years. I just realized the other day, I self-published a fanzine when I was a kid, and I had just picked open a copy of it, and I realized, oh, this came out in June 1982. So I've been doing this kind of officially for 40 years, which was like, holy crap, man. That's incredible.
Do you guys still have time to read comics? Do you still do it like in a daily basis?
I don't really super follow a lot of new comics. There's some I usually will go to the comic store every week or every couple weeks, see what's there, see what tickles my fancy, and sometimes I'll buy something and sometimes I won't. So I keep an eye on what goes on. I'm sent every Image comic, so I've got just tons and tons and tons of Image comics. So I can read those to my heart's content. But a lot of it, I always end up kind of going back to my comfort stuff. Like, oh, I love these old Spider-Mans by Stan and Steve Ditko. I'm going to go read those again. Or I'll get on a jag of looking at, whatever book I happen to love. I probably look at the Kirby's run on the Fantastic Four and Ditko's run on Spider-Man probably more than anything else. And both of those were not from my childhood. Those were kind of before my time. When I started reading the Fantastic Four, it was way, way later.
What about Mr. Gordon?
Well, those were my childhood, so yeah, that's
no. But today, do you still read comics? Do you still how regularly do you do it?
I haven't read comics for many decades. Even when I was working in comics, it was very few that I read. I mean, there's always stuff that comes out that I remember I wasn't reading much, and then The Watchmen came out, and I thought Watchmen was really brilliant stuff. Or, you know, Batman Year One or Daredevil, you know, the Miller stuff I really liked. I thought that stuff had really kicked comics' game up a little bit, and Watchmen was pretty amazing. But besides that, you know, Swamp Thing, I thought Rick Veitch did a great job writing Swamp Thing for a while after Alan left. I thought he was really good. But no, I don't read much stuff. But I go to Mike's, what's that site, Eric? Mike's Amazing World of DC Comics.
Yeah,
something like that. And he has all the books up for like every month. And you can go back there and
pictures of all the covers and
the
stuff.
covers of all the comics. And you can go back to, like, you know, the month you were, you know, 8 years old and 4 months old. 8 years, 4 months old, and you can look at those books and go, wow, I didn't know Magnus Robot Fighter came out this early. I mean, and then you go pull out your Magnus Robot Fighters and read those. So I do look at not my old stuff, but the old stuff that I bought when I was a kid a lot. I love old Dennis the Menace, and there was a book by Archie that I loved as a kid called Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats, mostly drawn by a guy named Orlando Bacino, who nobody's ever heard of. But as a kid, I thought it was the coolest stuff in the world. And then anything with Betty and Veronica in it, of course.
Is that it?
Because they were the hot babes.
Yeah. There's a Veronica vampire now.
The what?
Veronica became a vampire now. There's a Veronica book. Yeah, she's Vampironica.
Vampironica, yeah.
Vampironica.
I kid you not. And it's good. It's good.
Okay.
I'm really astonished by you guys. I really don't see a lot of good information and good stories about comics that you guys are giving to us. I don't even have no idea how to ask to you now because you talk so much. You talk a lot of things. I see Al Gordon's resume, every work he works in, and I say, wow, how do you do that? A lot of things. I don't think have one character in Marvel or DC that you don't work on. How is that? How you see? Oh, I work with this. I work with this. Oh, I make inks in this. I write. How you see? I work in a lot of these comics. I see. In the same way, in a way, you help to make all these characters, all this great stuff, the Marvel, DC, Image, and a lot of others publishers. How do you feel seeing? Oh, I work with everything this one. Even Transformers. You ink Transformers. I like Transformers. Okay?
I like Transformers.
In the internet, when Wikipedia first came around, I saw my page there, and I thought I was teaching a class on storytelling, and I thought the guys had put it together for a joke. I was like, this can't be about me. This is crazy. And at the time, I didn't have internet at home. So I was writing down all the stuff that they wrote about me, and I would go home and, like, I didn't work on that. And they knew more about me than I did. I would come home and go, God, I did work on that book. That's just crazy. You got to keep in mind that, comics were my living. For a long time, it was my day job. So you get up in the morning and you do comic books. And I think I had a pretty decent reputation as being somebody who was dependable. A lot of people in comics aren't dependable. And so I had a lot of editors that liked to work with me just because I was dependable, not because I was any good. So
dependable is good. Trust me. Dependable is good.
Vampironica.
Vampironica. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. But that's not in every book, right? Isn't that just like a?
No, it's kind of like an alternative world where Veronica is a vampire.
Afterlife with Archie for a while, where they were doing zombie stuff. Remember doing that.
Yeah. Well,
so it's just another flight of fancy.
Well, they had a
kind of nice
with the Punisher, yes. So
yes.
Well, there's no continuity in comics anymore at all, so
yeah,
I kind of miss that. And that's
only on Savage Dragon.
Yeah,
that's true. But not in Wildstar, because Erik did a bunch of guest starred Wildstar in a bunch of issues. I'm not sure if I ever read those, so I have no idea.
I want to at some point.
No, it was amazing because he did like a future flashback at some point, and when the date became real, the story organic connected into the. I don't know. For a guy who doesn't write a script, I don't know how that's even possible, because it made perfect sense. Something that we read at some point and with okay, he just went crazy here. Okay, that is okay. And then when we get to the date, it makes perfect sense. Man, amazing.
That one worked out pretty well.
Yeah, you gotta have to have written down somewhere in some word. It's impossible.
Well,
there's a post-it somewhere.
The problem with that, when I got to it, was I realized, well, Al's not doing his book on a regular basis, and in that story, I had Wildstar being like an older guy, and so when I got to that point, I was like, well, Wildstar can't be an older guy because Wildstar's not aging, because Al's not doing his book. I'm not going to turn him into an old man behind his back.
So he wasn't an old man in the first book.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing was just having it be that, you know, this stuff is released that's making everybody turn old, and that's why everybody's suddenly turning to dust and getting all old and stuff. So it was like, all right, I got to find a way to make this make sense. It was sort of a mad scramble to come up with something that actually worked. But I couldn't put it off too long, because eventually Malcolm would be too old to be the same age he was in that flashback. So it's like, holy crap.
I have to read those.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Those in Vampironica. If you want to see Betty trying to suck Archie, this is the book.
Who drew it? Who's the artist on
it?
This is
somebody you never heard of, I guarantee you.
Okay. I've heard of
them. Audrey Mock and Joey Isma. I don't know how to pronounce that.
See?
Never heard of him.
See? You kill those people?
I've never heard of anybody in that.
I mean, there's at this point, I don't know how many people in the industry would be that familiar as a name to you, Al, because you haven't read them in a bit, and a lot of the people have kind of shuffled out. So it's like, John Romita Jr. still making comics.
A lot of people
still making stuff. Scott Hanna, and then it tapers off. Because a lot of the guys, even from 30 years ago,
and there's a lot of people from outside the U.S. too.
Yeah. There's an awful lot of that. It's like, is Mark Bagley still actively making comics?
Yes. And he's drawing Spider-Man at this time too.
Exactly like he did in the 90s.
Yeah.
I have Spider-Man recently.
I have translated one of his Spiders lately. I have been translating Spider-Man for Brazil for 22 years, so I got all my guys in mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, one of the things you guys don't get to experience is, like, when I pick up a copy of Spider-Man #3. First of all, it's really hard to own anything like that because it costs more than lunch money now. But my old comics, when I pull them out, they smell like mildew, like they've been in a basement for years. And, you know, if you grow up with that, you really start enjoying that smell.
Comics don't smell like newsprint anymore.
Yeah, our comics smell bad too.
I thought they wouldn't because they're on better paper than ours. Ours were on.
It's a different smell. It's more.
Oh yeah, probably yeah. But we love them as well. Yes. The smell. We love the smell. The same. Yeah.
New paper. Yes.
It smells like the bottom of one of your closets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It smells like possibilities.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Taking it all in. Oh,
yeah. Oh. The first thing we do before we read is smell.
Yeah, wake up and smell the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't.
Yeah, there you go.
Since we are talking about old comics, Mr. Larsen, recently I have translated your Captain America, the end, that you have written and also was responsible for the art. How is the feeling about going back to the old home, doing something like that, like Captain America?
It was interesting because it was something that I certainly haven't. It wasn't a character that I was really that associated with, so it was kind of an interesting choice on their part to go, yeah, let's use this dude. But it was, I wanted to just kind of do a Kirby riff on it as best I could, and so that was kind of my scheme on there, was just to do that.
Which area of Captain America were you into then?
It was called Captain America: The End, so it was supposed to be like the last Captain America story. Like, if you were doing the final issue of his book,
what would you do? Take place after which issues? Like the Kirby Frankie Okoye issues?
No, what era was I looking at?
Yeah.
That, just whatever it would be. So yeah, the Kirby Okoye, I kind of had all that stuff out from all the different times he worked on it. Not the Golden Age stuff, but
I love the Kirby Okoye stuff. That stuff was awesome.
Yeah. I love that stuff. But I was doing Cap as an old man, and he was in the future, and everything was all messed up, and everybody had been turned into a red skull. So everybody's running around with a red skull head. So I sort of did a riff on I Am Legend, except everybody was Red Skull instead. So it was kind of fun to do, but drawing, I had no idea drawing Captain America's shield was such a bitch.
Why is that?
Just getting it so that the stripes are the right distance apart from each other was a difficult thing. I didn't have ellipse templates that were quite the right size.
Because you used to borrow mine all the time.
His shield would change size from one panel to the next. It was just a mess. So I just was like, I have to have him lose his shield for a little while so I don't have to draw
it. Let's say the shield is something I missed to draw. It's the round shield is something complicated to draw in some occasions. You can have a square shield or something more practical, please.
Well, what I didn't do is I realized that Jack didn't put like new, more modern artists will put like a shine on it, where there'll be like other additional lines on it. But Jack always kept it open for color, so it's just the stripes and the circle in the middle with a star on it. So I was like, well, I got to do it Jack style. But I realized when I'm doing it that, all these other artists are able to kind of hide hide problems by putting the shiny stuff on it.
So it was always an inker's problem, is what you're saying.
I should have had to ink it, man. That would have been it.
Well, it's just like when I was doing the Justice League all those many years ago. I would get pages. I can talk. Kevin wouldn't draw people's feet or their hands, and I think I left early one night, and you were working late with Pete and Chris, and I came in the next morning, and there were bunny slippers drawn on the feet of the characters that Kevin didn't draw feet on. So I inked them.
Hey guys, look at this.
Oh,
Him, drown Larsen, Mr. Larsen Dragon.
He looks like somebody.
Way better than Dwayne Johnson, right? Wow.
He doesn't look like Eric. He looks like some comedian. I can't.
I understand now the resistance to do live action.
But that's the thing too, is once you do live action, suddenly you've got to make all sorts of decisions that you didn't really even think you had to make before. Like when you're drawing Captain America has scale mail that is costumes made of. But when you're drawing in the comics, it's like, yeah, there's scale mail, but it's only on certain pieces that you're trying to emphasize. And then it seamlessly transitions to being cloth on his head. And you can't do that in live action. It's like, no, if it's scale mail, it's got to be that on the entire piece. It can't just be in the shadowy areas. It's got to be all of it. It's one or the other. You got to make a decision.
The magic of imagining.
You know? But in comics, we can do all kinds of stuff. You know, people can run in heels and people can fly, and costumes don't bunch up in weird ways. There's no wrinkles to speak of. There's all this stuff that you can't really do in live action. And then in live action, suddenly it's like, oh, when a real person plays that, that's their real face, and that real face looks really different than the one in the comics. Like one in the comics looks so different. You know, when you're in comics, you can go, you know, Superman puts on a pair of glasses and he becomes Clark Kent. You can kind of buy it because everybody kind of looks like Superman, really.
Yeah.
Any one of these guys could be Superman in a Joe Shuster comic. Yeah. And then in real life, when you got a real guy, you know, it's like, yeah,
it doesn't work.
Guys ever. That doesn't work at all.
There's also technical problems. Most people don't realize that Steve Ditko had figured this thing out with Spider-Man, where the webbing on the costume is always different. It goes a different direction in the gloves and the boots, especially. So if the hand's coming to you, the cuff is a convex pointing this way, and so the webbing would go that direction. But if the hand went this way, it would be concave. And the webbing would go the other direction, depending on the shape of the cuff.
Wow. We would do that all the time. Is just have the webbing change, mostly just to emphasize the three-dimensionality of it and his musculature, so you can go like, this is going to make the seam rounder if I'm having the direction of the web change from going this way or that. And you can't do that in a live-action movie. That would be super weird.
Yeah. This could happen in a live-action movie.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be me. That would be cast as the leading role of Savage Dragon.
A nice drawing. Who did that?
It was a fan. He gave it to me on a convention here in Brazil. He didn't sign it.
Oh, that fool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Hey, man, that'd be great to have somebody draw you as the Savage Dragon.
Yeah.
Well, I think...
What's that?
Vai lá, Cassiano.
Não, a ordem é Cadu agora. Cadu e a question.
Eu acho que a gente tem que terminar.
Oh, no, I don't have any other questions, actually.
Well, I think we have to give you back to your families.
Yeah.
This is my pick.
Al did Tarzan. Al wrote a Tarzan thing.
I wrote a Tarzan graphic novel with...
oh, wow.
Where is
it?
Yeah, Tarzan.
Nice.
Focus. There you go.
It's mostly painted by Tom Yates and it's painted by Tom Yates and Bo Hampton. I had a blast writing it because I'm a big fan of the weird serials that I saw when I was a little kid, you know, Saturday afternoons at the theater down the street from our house. There were serials like The Phantom, and Tarzan and Commando Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen was my favorite. So this was supposed to appear it did appear in Dark Horse Presents. So it was written, the first 10 chapters were all 8 pages, which was a pain in the ass to write 8-page stories. But I treated it like it was one of those old serials, and I enjoyed it. And then by the end of it, it got pretty crazy. So it's fun. It probably doesn't make any sense to anybody but me.
So this is new.
Yeah, well, it came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Once and Future Tarzan. Beautiful cover by Thomas Yates.
Beautiful.
Oh, is this the part where we plug all our stuff?
Please.
Yes, please do.
Well, it was for me.
Savage Dragon and Ant. Those are my two. Those are my babies.
Now.
Cool. Higher. Closer.
All right. Higher.
Dragon and ant
to each other.
Closer to the land.
There's only one ant. Who's
All
here.
right. There you go. Fun times.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was amazing. That was a borderline religious experience.
Yeah. So we have met our God, so now we can die happily.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is it for me.
Anyway, I don't know if Mr. Larsen has seen, but this is the Brazilian dragon
version.
Brazilian version.
I have cool. I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would send me all these various comics have got dragon from all sorts of different countries that it's been in over the years.
I like all the cool stuff up on your
I have
wall.
had the honor of editing and translating it. I was the first Brazilian image editor. So
nice.
Yeah. He translated more than
the toughest parts with translation and things like that is things that end up being like plays on words, because it's like it'll come up later on. It's like there was like a sequence where I had a character named Amanda Mills who ended up being married to a guy named Bruce Love, and we finally got those two names put together when Dragon goes into a bar saying, "I'm looking for Amanda Love," and everybody ran for cover. But it's that joke, you can't really translate it into another language and have it make sense. Unless you have to change. I got to see this coming, and I've got to somehow come up with a name that makes sense here.
We have to change the names, but between the both of you, the most difficult thing I had to translate was Ground Zero for Wildstar, because Sky Zero, because we don't have a similar expression to Ground Zero. So Sky Zero was very bizarre and very difficult to translate into Portuguese, but we did it. And
it's called Jack.
You introduced yourself to me when Mario introduced himself to me on Facebook. I thought you were the guy I talked to that translated Wildstar. When we had done Wildstar coming out, this guy came up to me at an Oakland convention, I think, and I think he was South American, and he said, "Do you have time? Can we have lunch together?" He says, "I'm translating Wildstar," and I said, "Sure, that'd be great." And I ended up having a 3-hour lunch with this guy. Wow. And he was really smart. And at one point...
So it's not Mario.
I knew that was coming.
American humor. We were talking, and he... at one point, I told him I was a big Joseph Campbell fan. Right? The Hero of a Thousand Faces and stuff. And I'd read everything, and I was a big fan of The Power of Myth, and I was a fan of Carl Sagan. I'd watched Cosmos when I was a little kid. And he just went, I get it. And I was like, what? And then he started going through the book really quickly, the American book. He said, so this is a play on words then. This means this. This is like Joseph Campbell. I said, yeah. And that's why we spent 3 hours talking. It was a blast. I had so much fun.
Cool.
That's great.
So you're not him. So I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Never been to Oakland, and unfortunately, never met you or Mr. Larsen, but
And now we understand why Mr. Gordon loves 2 pages with a lot of dialogue, because
I don't usually.
Those are the 3-hour lunch.
Joseph Campbell and everything.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Northern exposure. So when 2 or 3 characters start talking to each other, and it's twisted and weird, and I love that stuff when it's just people talking about crazy stuff. I don't know if you guys ever have Northern Exposure. It was an American TV show, and it's very much like Twin Peaks. It's just off in crazy land, and I love it. The characters are so interesting. They don't have to do anything, and they're entertaining.
Nice.
That's great.
Northern Exposure. I'm gonna write this down. Another.
Avoid at all costs.
Joseph Campbell.
What? Run while you have the chance.
Well, catch up on.
Yes.
And about that, are you guys watching anything on streaming right now? Is there any series that you are?
Ted Lasso is awesome.
Ted Lasso.
Okay.
I haven't seen that.
My wife watches all sorts of stuff. I don't really do that much. I don't think Eric watches too much TV at all. Do you?
We've got a bunch of those things now, and we're kind of buzz through things, but we bail on things so quickly that there's an awful lot of things I could go, oh, we watched this 100 things, and we watched the first episode of all of them. If Jamie doesn't like it, it'll be like, no, we're not watching that. And if I don't like it, it's like, all right, I'm going to begrudgingly watch it. I mean, I'm mostly down there just to sit next to her, It's like, this is all right.
That's love. That's love.
But
yeah, it's really
like, it's like we tried to find. There's a show called Orphan Black.
I saw that. Yeah.
I really like that show a lot.
From BBC Canada, if I recall.
That too.
Yeah, I like that one. I like that one quite a bit. And then I don't know. We watched Downton Abbey.
Yeah, that's a love commitment. Yeah.
If you any of that into Savage Dragon, so
the only new stuff that I've seen is stuff that my wife turns me on to, Valina, and what's the show? Oh God, I forgot his name. He was involved in a really popular cartoon. Now I'm dating myself, but it's a Star Trek spinoff, and it's really, really good.
Oh, it's Lower Decks.
The Orville?
No, Lower Decks was awesome. I love Lower Decks. The first episode, I keep rewinding it because the characters talk so fast. I'm like, what did he say? But
the show you're thinking of is The Orville.
The Orville. Orville is great.
With the guy from Family Guy.
Family Guy, right. And it's more like Star Trek than anything by the Star Trek people in the last.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Oh,
yeah, it's
nice.
really
cool.
And I guess the last season just started being released now. So they've got 2 episodes out maybe today or 3. But I look forward to that. We haven't started.
Where is that? I don't know what channel these things even run on.
Got me.
Yeah.
My wife's in charge of the TV. I don't know. Yeah, Lower Decks. Rogerio, Lower Decks is really good. You would just never. I'm not a big cartoon fan for years, but we just bought all of the Bruce Timm stuff just a couple of years ago. So we watched the first season, the first series of Batman, which was really good.
Yeah.
The second one was really good. Superman was pretty good. The first season was pretty good. And Justice League is weird. We're just getting through that now. It seems really kind of herky jerky.
Really? I really love the.
I think the first season of Justice League. I think the biggest problem is that most of the episodes are 2-parters. So,
all of them, or 3-parters. The first episodes were 3.
Yes, exactly. But when they move to Justice League Unlimited,
that's great.
It flows. It
Gets
flows.
better.
It
really
does.
bad.
I like voice
So
acting
much better.
And the Justice League Unlimited, they put like all the characters in it.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see it. Awesome.
Samurai Jack is an awesome cartoon.
Oh, Samurai Jack, cool.
That was really good stuff.
You're probably gonna love Primal from the same
really?
creator. Yeah, it's a man and a caveman and a dinosaur, and it's really rough. It's a really beautiful piece of animation. Yeah, Primal.
Okay, I'll check that out. We there was an American made. Oh shit! It was a really good sort of buddy movie cartoon. Very Asian. Oh man, now I forgot what it's called. They have element powers, fire powers, water.
Oh, Avatar.
Oh,
That first 4 seasons were awesome. That's better.
That was amazing.
There are 2 series. Yes, they have the first one is the first the Legend of Aang.
Right. The Legend of
Korra. And the Legend of Korra. That is the second Avatar. So they change a little bit. I love them both. I think they are also.
We bought them on Blu-ray, but
really
we haven't
great.
watched the second one yet. The second series.
Yes, but it's really good. You're gonna love it, I think. So.
Okay, so since we're talking about cartoons, I think we have to end it. I think we're way past the theme. I'm starting to get worried that we're clinging on to you guys too much.
Too much.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, but I hope you understand.
All right, guys. Well,
Guys, the time saying goodbye.
I'm going to sign out. So
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for doing this. Is there a way that we'll get like a copy of the recorded thing? Can you download it or something?
It will be on YouTube
Fine.
forever.
It will be available on YouTube.
It's already recorded in your computer. You just have to have internet access.
We can send you via the Facebook Messenger. We can send you the link, and you
we
have
transfer.
it
Mr. Eric and Gordon, please. Okay, Mr. Larsen, thanks so much. Mr. Al Gordon, thanks so much.
It was an honor.
Thank you for everything. For everything.
Nicely done. All right, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a nice dinner.
All right, will do. Talk to you later, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ei.
Uau, isso aconteceu.
Uau!
Caraca, isso aconteceu. A gente
cheguei a 2 horas falar do seriado dos enfermeiros noruegueses. Quase que eu falei para ele.
A gente estava falando de desenho animado e seriado com Erik Larsen.
Ficamos 2 horas. Ele tinha falado que seria 1 hora apenas.
Sim.
Que bom.
Mas aí é o fuso horário. Ele vai entender. É o fuso horário. É o fuso horário. 1 hora deles é 2 horas nossa. É fuso horário.
Eu mandei mensagem para vocês aqui que eu falei, cara, eles não querem ir embora. E agora?
Não, tudo bem, a gente fica, né?
Agora,
tem patrimonial agora sobre crianças abandonadas, mas
olha, eu vou dizer uma coisa pior para você. A hora que a gente bater com a cabeça no travesseiro, vai vir 1 milhão de perguntas que a gente
não fez. Eu fiquei aqui, putz. É porque eu fiquei com a pergunta da galera, ainda tinha muita pergunta que o pessoal fez, não consegui. Eu deixei ela em favoritos, mas não consegui fazer todas. Peço desculpa, galera. É porque.
Sim. Mas tinha muita pergunta mesmo da galera também, então relaxa.
Era uma entrevista, mas virou um bate-papo. Começou a ficar muito descontraído. E daí,
exatamente.
Vamos olhar as perguntas agora.
E uma coisa muito legal é que eles falaram.
Eu respondo a pergunta da galera agora.
Muita coisa legal.
Você responde?
Eu acho que muitas das perguntas que o pessoal tinha, eles acabaram conversando e falando.
Uma hora que eu te chamei, Sala, que eu falei assim: ele não vai responder essa pergunta do Mário. Ele vai, vou deixar pra lá. Daí eu falei, Rogério, e daí ele não, vou responder.
Eu tava
assim. Foi a do Caruso? Sobre o Liefeld?
Oi? Não, era sobre. Você perguntou sobre a Image. Alguma coisa assim
Sobre os 30 anos olhando para trás?
30 anos olhando para trás, ele ficou meio tipo. Eu falei, bem, ele não quer responder sobre isso.
Não, mas eu acho que, na verdade, ou falhou o áudio, ou eu não me expressei bem para ele. Eu acho que ele não entendeu a pergunta.
Mas eu achei que ele não fosse responder, assim como eu achei que ele não fosse responder, falar sobre o Jim Lee e o Rob Liefeld,
dos 2 anos.
Falou de uma forma.
O Von Deus fez uma pergunta muito boa aqui que a gente não chegou a ler, que é como criar novos leitores no mundo onde os quadrinhos são feitos para os fãs mais velhos. Será que a gente está fadado a deixar de existir em 30 anos?
Só nessa pergunta aí, eu acho que os dois iam ficar falando mais meia hora. Porque...
Mas aí a gente não ia chegar a falar de Avatar, entendeu? Eu acho que...
Não é legal falar de Avatar, vai.
Avatar que ele nem lembrava o nome, mas assim, ele gostava, ele gosta de Avatar.
Assim, a gente tem que pegar essa entrevista, tem que gravar um Blu-ray e mandar pro Algordo.
Eu acho que a gente vai ter que mandar
Blu-ray.
Gente.
E alguém ainda vai ter que legendar esse papo extra que a gente tá tendo aqui agora.
Pra botar lá depois.
A gente não vai mandar esse papo extra não, tá?
Mas eu acho que meio que o Al Gordon acabou respondendo essa aí também, porque ele falou, cara, que ele quando tinha 9 anos, ele pegou gibi pra ler, cara, e ele foi acompanhando, sabe? E depois eu até comentei com ele lá que a sensação que ele teve com os 9 anos foi quando eu tive com os meus 9 anos também, entendeu?
É isso aí.
Então, assim, eu acho que a resposta tá aí, cara. Crianças de 9 anos estão sempre pegando um gibi na banca, cara. Sabe? Tipo, isso.
Os filhos do Erik Larsen não estão lendo os gibis dele.
Bom, mas aí o gibi dele é o trabalho do pai, né, cara? Olha lá, é diferente, né? Pô.
Que desnaturados essas crianças, na moral. Alguém bota essa legenda aqui.
Mais foda que eu reparei que ele tava desenhando. Eu falei,
queria que o Erik Larsen
fosse conversando com a gente.
E não tá desenhando pouco. Vocês consideram bem comemorado os 30 anos da Image com não só mas 2?
Achei ótimo.
Eu considero bem comemorados os meus 40 anos. Imagina 30 anos.
Caraca, o Al Gordon trabalha pelo mesmo com quadrinhos a minha vida inteira.
Exato.
É mesmo, doido, né?
Caraca, comecei a fazer
quase tudo que você leu, né, também.
O Al Gordon não, na verdade, o Erik Larsen.
Erik Larsen.
Eu tenho um fanzine que...
Os dois têm quase a mesma idade, né? Eu acho que o Gordon...
Não, o Gordon é mais velho.
É mais velho,
Ele pegou os quadrinhos lançando. Ele pegou os quadrinhos lançando na banca. Homem-Aranha, Quarteto Fantástico.
Homem-Aranha 3, cara.
Número 3, Homem-Aranha 3.
Como isso sendo... mais antigo, né? Caralho, pegar o Homem-Aranha 3 na
banca, né, cara?
Vocês viram que várias vezes o Erik Larsen brincou que o Al Gordon era bem mais velho que ele.
Sim, ele cutucou,
não, ele tava nessa época e tal.
Bom, mas se ele tinha 9 anos quando ele pegou o Amazing Spider-Man 3, o Amazing Spider-Man 3 saiu em 62, então ele tem 69 anos hoje.
Vem cá, a gente esqueceu de deixar o Levi Trindade entrar, né? A gente ficou tão empolgado.
Ele não veio, não?
Ele não entrou.
Não, cara, eu lembro de ter visto o Levi Trindade assim, que nem o Super-Homem na Zona Negativa, os 3 prisioneiros, assim.
Gente, essa entrevista vai ser legendada, tá? A gente não quis ficar fazendo a tradução aqui, como a gente faz com as coisas. Vai ser. Agora a Adobe Premiere faz a transcrição de tudo, é super rápido.
Que maravilha. Agora que a Adobe Premiere vai dar pau. Eu quero ver o Adobe Premiere legendar as merda que eu falei.
Qualquer coisa a gente bota o Mário para traduzir, não tem problema.
Essa tradução
uma tradução a mais, uma tradução a menos.
Quer ficar até 6 horas.
2 horinhas de legenda, né?
Teve um momento que passou batido que o Al Gordon elogiou a estante do Mário.
Sim.
É verdade,
Isso eu não
ele falou, você tem umas coisas interessantes aí atrás. Ele falou.
Pô, você tem uns negócios legais aí e tal, aí na confusão passou batido.
Porque virou muito papo.
Vai estar no Blu-ray, Mário. Vai estar no Blu-ray.
Na verdade,
bate uma foto e manda pra ele, bate um print, né? Tipo,
e se eu disser para todos vocês que nesse exato momento o Al Gordon está no Messenger, ele está dizendo que foi divertido e que ele faz questão de receber o link do YouTube.
Olha aí, cara.
Eu não mando nem mensagem pro Larsen, porque ele é super... O Mário sabe. O Larsen é super taxativo nas mensagens.
Ele é econômico nas palavras. Yes or no.
A gente acabou de ver ele falando, né? Que ele reduz o texto todo a 3.
Isso.
Né? Então...
É uma prática diária, né?
Eu fiquei assustado, cara, que ele não escreve roteiro. Ele faz...
Isso é muito doido.
Cabeça.
Isso é muito doido.
Gente, é
isso
30
é bem saudável.
Essa parte tem que fazer um corte disso aí, que é muito bom.
É 30
dicas passadas, várias dicas de como artista.
Sim, várias dicas ótimas. Não escreva um roteiro.
Não escreva um roteiro.
Sai desenhando no papel.
Várias dicas ótimas.
Não, ele faz nada. A vida dele é toda feita.
Seja um gênio.
A vida dele é fazer layout. Tem layout pela casa toda.
Cara.
Né?
Tem aqui um layout aqui.
Eu queria ver o seu gibi cagando.
É o Rob Liefeld desenhando dirigindo.
Não, o Erik Larsen falou isso, que ele vai
no banheiro e sai. Ele às vezes vai no banheiro e sai com um negócio desenhado aí.
Ele falou que ele sai com rascunho, é diferente.
Não, mas aí ele sai com um layout, cara. Ele faz um rascunho, né? Tipo,
layout. Layout pode ser palitinho, cabeça palitinho, assim, sabe?
Olha, a gente ficou muito empolgado aqui, mas eu queria agradecer a galera da live aí. Porra, o pessoal que chegou depois ficou de cara que a live tava rolando. O pessoal falando, caraca!
Teve gente, caramba, Erik Larsen Al Gordon. Como eu não sabia disso? Porque você não segue o Mundo Gonzo nas redes sociais.
Chegou o Mundo Gonzo.
Obrigado ao Adão Lima que mandou o desenho também.
E galera, se vocês ficaram de cara, a gente vai dizer, a gente também tava de cara falando com eles.
Nós estávamos atônitos.
A gente pode contar o bastidor de ontem? Não, né?
E tem gente perguntando, o Guto Rafael tá perguntando se vai ter outra live para falar da image dos anos 2000 para cá. Não vai. A gente quer falar de
Não, vamos falar de
anos 90.
Porra.
A gente só faz alguém image de 2000 depois de trazer o McFarlane, o Silvestre, até o Valentino. Né?
O Valentino respondeu, só isso que eu quero dizer para vocês.
Muito de jovenzinho, e ele precisa entender que isso aqui que a gente está fazendo é a nossa crise de meia-idade, entendeu?
Exato.
Ou isso, ou comprar um conversível e paquerar a menina novinha na rua. Como a gente não tem dinheiro para conversível, não vai paquerar a menina novinha na rua, a gente fica falando dos quadrinhos dos anos 90, que é aí que mora o cheiro que a gente quer.
A Giovana tá falando assim, se a gente tem noção do que acabou de acontecer ao vivo.
É o cheiro de gibi. Todo mundo cheirando de gibi, né?
A gente tem noção do que a gente acabou de fazer ao vivo.
Não, ainda não bateu, não.
Assim, é o que eu sempre falo, a gente poderia fazer uma entrevista gravada, ia ser super lindo, mas eu acho legal ter a participação de todo mundo ao mesmo tempo. É a oportunidade que eu tento fazer aqui do Mundo Gonzo, transformar aqui um beco dos artistas, sabe? Onde você tá.
Tanto é que a gente já tem um desenhista aí, cara. Tem parente desenhista aí que tem o irmão do Libermejo aí, o Moriael Bermejo.
E aquela coisa.
Então divulgou legal. Tem que ficar aqui. E assim, vamos lá. Valentino respondeu.
Eita.
Valentino respondeu e tá muito parecido com Larsen no início dos papos comigo. Então, eu acho que vai rolar.
E assim,
eu acho que pode rolar.
Se tiver um bate-papo com o Di Valentino, seu Cassiano, eu quero estar, tá? Vou ficar muito feliz.
O Mário não. O Mário já falou que...
O Mário não gosta do Record.
O Mário falou que pegou a revista... Não. E,
Valentino?
Assim, depois de hoje, gente, eu vou mandar mensagem pro Silvestre e pro Tony McFarlane.
Claro.
Pode mandar.
Claro. Manda pro Ice Potássio, acho que ele vem.
Porque o lance...
O Ice Potássio acho que vem mesmo, porque ele já participou de várias lives.
Pois é, o que ele tá fazendo agora? Porra nenhuma, gente.
Podia ter chamado.
Trabalhando, né?
Fazendo capa, né?
E assim deixa eu fazer um elogio aqui pro seu Cassiano. Deixa eu aqui fazer um elogio pro Cassiano e pros meus colegas aqui de live. Que, uma entrevista arrumadinha, certinha, com perguntas arrumadinhas, é legal, é muito bacana e informativa, e é bacana. Mas essa conversa, a gente conhece os ídolos da gente, no caso, o Larsen e o Al Gordon, a gente conhece eles de um jeito mais humano, de um jeito mais legal, mais próximo, tipo... A gente faz umas perguntas e eles engatam e começam a conversar e você começa a ver como que eles são, como eles trabalham, onde eles trabalharam, que são coisas que a gente não planejou. E isso fica muito legal, isso é muito bacana.
E fica um bate-papo real, né? Porque as nossas perguntas não sendo planejadas, elas são ganchos do que eles mesmos falaram. Né?
E E eu acho que quem tá assistindo fica com aquela cara de, poxa, se eu tivesse conversando lá, eu tava conversando assim. Fica aquela coisa legal.
Né? As perguntas que deu para fazer aqui, né? Pra galera, dá um pouco disso, essa sensação de, porra, eu tô participando junto com eles. Eu sou parte disso, né? A ideia é essa sempre, né?
Foi muito maneiro.
A ideia é essa, na verdade.
Foi muito bacana.
Uma coisa meio dieta, né? Se você fala, vocês, todo mundo faz pergunta, e o pessoal fica só assistindo, né? Eu gosto da participação da galera do chat.
E a gente não conseguiu fazer o Caruso chorar. Droga.
Porra, precisava, caceta.
Nossa, mas
não, mas pô.
Não, rapaz, agora
camiseta,
novela,
cara.
Eu só choro mediante pagamento, rapaz.
Fernando
chorar.
Choro pra novela. Agora,
Fernando agora é galã. É galã. Porra, fica lá com selfies não, como é que é o nome daquilo? Filmando no espelho, falando, olha que gatão.
Ó, gastei minha camiseta, eu uso essa camiseta tipo 2 vezes por ano, que é pra não sair
já não precisa tirar agora, mas já tira e já coloca no cabide, melhor coisa.
Porra,
essa
mostrei
aquela que vendia na Post HQ, não é?
Não, essa aqui
essa é importada?
Não. Essa aqui foi um irmão de uma ex-namorada minha, de quando eu tinha, sei lá, 16, 17 anos. Ela ficava puta porque ela dizia que o irmão dela gostava mais de mim do que dela e que eu gostava mais do irmão dela do que dela. E ele me deu de aniversário. Ele fez a camisa. Ele arranjou a imagem, levou lá naquelas gráficas que faziam.
Silk, aquelas gráficas de Silk, né? Fica bem
emborrachado. Eu tenho essa camisa desde 96, sei lá, e foi ela que eu levei lá pra San Diego Comic Con e o Erik Larsen autografou pra mim.
E ainda cabe, pô, parabéns, cara.
Obrigado.
Não tinha minha camisa de 16 anos não cabe mais não, cara.
Vou fazer
também não.
Que nem o pessoal do jornal americano, and this just in. O senhor Erik Larsen acaba de falar que foi muito legal, principalmente porque nós tocamos em assuntos que eles nunca tocam quando são entrevistados.
Olha aí!
Como é que as pessoas vão chamar Erik Larsen para falar de Avatar, gente? Não chama, rapaz.
Assim, eu fiquei preocupado.
Cassiano, já vai fazendo uma logo nova aí que vai ter que chamar isso aqui de Gonzo's World para ficar
já tem, né?
Os americanos.
Eles não sabem o que é mundo, né? Eu acho que eles sabem o que é mundo.
Mundo, sim.
Não sabe o que é Gonzo.
Eles sabem que é o Gonzo lá deles.
Mas perigas eles confundirem com...
Eles estão vendo Avatar, Cassiano. Acho que eles não sabem o que é Gonzo, não.
Ele não sabia nem o nome de Avatar.
Não lembra nem o nome do Avatar.
Vamos já preparando o francês aí para trazer os...
Alguém sabe francês? Porque se souber, eu mando e-mail. Que a cara de pau aqui que eu tenho é o demônio, né?
Oui, je parle français aussi. Pour parler un peu de...
Pera, alguém sabe falar francês além de nome de comida?
Que se for... Se for, amanhã eu já mando e-mail, hein?
Le petit partout.
Já há um repertório aqui. Na verdade, um cara que eu quero muito, e eu já tentei, mas não mandou nada, não consegui contato, é o Takehiko Inoue, né? Do Vagabond.
Mas aí o meu japonês...
seria uma live que teria que ser 9 horas da manhã.
Aí, não, parece que é um pouco mais complicado. Os autores são mais... Esses autores...
Eles são mais reclusos.
Reservado. Eu diria que o nome certo é reservado.
Não sei. Eu falei com uma representante de um deles e falou que é muito complicado.
Eles não podem...
Mas muito complicado não é impossível, né? Então...
bem...
Pessoas, minha luzinha do Ultraman está piscando, eu preciso me ausentar.
Não, meu também, amanhã
quero agradecer a
todos. Galera, semana que vem, Alan Moore no Mundo Gonzo.
Gibbons, e Dave Gibbons, não esqueça o Dave Gibbons.
Isso, né? Vamos pegar todos os reclusos, os caras que não vão pagar.
A gente brinca em Alan Moore, viu? A gente chama errado.
Não. Claro que não, cara.
Bom, Deus traduzindo aí falou que é Alan Moore e tem uma animação tem uma animação da...
Não, tá aí a filha dele, Dame Moore, que não deixa a gente mentir.
Isso aí.
Segundo Bom Deus, que é uma enciclopédia ambulante, é Alan Moore. E tem uma animação dos Simpsons que o Bart vai pedir autógrafo do Mr.
Ele fala Alan Moore.
Alan Moore.
Bom,
Igual o Terry Moore quando veio aqui, do Estranhos do Paraíso, é Terry Moore.
Que é sobrinho dele, lógico.
Ele fala, Hi, I'm Terry Moore. Ele não se chama de Terry Moore.
Então, e também tem o Grant Morrison. Né?
Olha aí, depois dessa...
Tchau, pessoal.
Pessoas, então, eu realmente preciso ir. Obrigado pelo convite.
Valeu, Mário. Valeu, Cadu. Valeu, Cassiano.
Valeu todo mundo. Valeu, Fernando. Saladino. Cadu. Caruso, eu sabia que você ia se amarrar. Gente, tchau. Obrigado a todo mundo que participou. A gente se esbarra para este mundo. Até a próxima. Vou colocar só a musiquinha para a gente não bater o telefone na cara de vocês aí de casa. Então, cadê a porcaria da musiquinha para colocar aqui? Tá aqui. Valeu, gente. Se esbarra para este mundo. Tchau, tchau.
Excelsior.
Pronto.
Cadê?